Okay, more Kaspar. So, Johnny Trot, in the last chapter, rescued Lizbeth as she was climbing out the window to help what she thought was an injured pigeon. And Lizbeth's parents were so happy and pleased with Johnny Trot that they gave him lots of money. And Lizbeth also gave him a picture of the ship that they're going to travel home on, which is called the Titanic. Okay, starts off with a picture. Thanks, Kaspar. Meow, meow, meow. Meow, meow, meow. I should have taken more notice of Lizbeth's drawings and appreciated them more when she gave them to me. But the truth was I'd never seen so much money. Sitting on my bed late that night, I kept counting it to make sure I wasn't dreaming it. Everyone on the corridor came in. They had to see it with their own eyes. Mary O'Connell held each note up to the light. I remember to check it wasn't a forgery. Well, you never know, do you? Not with these rich folk, she said. I told Mary something I hadn't spoken about with the others. How I'd been thinking about it and beginning to feel very uncomfortable about taking the money. Mary was always good about understanding right and wrong. I didn't do it for the money, Mary, I told her. I did it because Lizbeth was up there. I know that, Johnny, she said. But that doesn't mean you don't deserve it, does it? The money is your ticket out of here. It's a God-given fortune, so it is. There's 2 years' wages here. For God's sakes, you could go anywhere, do anything. Wouldn't any one of us like to do that? You don't want to be having to shine shoes for the rest of your life, do you? I lay awake most of the night, taking it all through with Kaspar. He was a good listener. By morning, I felt that, despite everything Mary had said, I might have to give the money back. Lizbeth's drawings were a thank you, and that was fine, but I couldn't help thinking that the money was in some way a kind of payoff, reward money for a bellboy, and I didn't want a reward. I'd give the money back. But then by morning I'd almost changed my mind again. Maybe Mary had been right after all. I'd keep the money, why shouldn't I? I was still lying there, propped up on my pillows, with Kaspar curled up at the end of the bed, looking at Lizbeth's picture of the great ship with 4 funnels steaming through the ocean, gulls flying overhead, when the door suddenly opened and Skullface stood there. I thought so. I thought as much, she said. First that girl was in here meowing like a cat, and that was odd enough. Then a day later she was up here again, wasn't she? But this time up on the roof, just outside your window. Strange, that. Strange sort of coincidence, I thought. Do you know something, Johnny Trot? I don't believe in coincidences. And now you're quite the little hero, aren't you? Well, I wasn't born yesterday, Johnny Trot. I'm no one's fool. I knew something fishy was going on, but now I can see it. And it isn't fishy at all. It's catty, more like. Oh dear. She's standing there looking very cross. There's Johnny Trot. There's Kaspar. Meow, meow. Meow. Oh dear. She does look a bit scary, doesn't she? She came into the room, shutting the door behind her, and stood over me with a nasty, vindictive grin on her face. Kaspar had leapt up onto the windowsill and was hissing and wailing at her furiously. Well, now, she went on, I hear you've come into the money, Johnny Trot, is that right? I nodded. Here's the deal, then, she went on. Either you pack your bags, hand in your uniform, and you're out on the streets within the hour, or you hand over the money. It's that simple. Hand over the money and you can stay. I'll even let you keep the horrible cat up here for a while anyway. There, I can't be more generous than that now, can I? Doesn't sound very fair. A few moments later, as she walked out of my room, tucking the envelope into her pocket, I was almost grateful to her. After all, she'd made the decision for me, so I gave her the money. I wouldn't have. After all, she'd made my decision for me. I sat down on my bed, where Kaspar soon joined me for some petting and reassurance. I was thinking things through. I was no poorer than I had been before it had all happened, and now at least I had her word, for what it was worth, that Kaspar would be safe, for a while anyway. I still had my job, and I had a great sense of relief. But that was very soon going to be overwhelmed by a wave of sadness. All too soon now, Elizabeth would be leaving and sailing back to America. I'm going to miss her. We're both going to miss her, Kaspar, I said aloud. We won't miss the money. We never really had it, did we? But we'll miss Elizabeth. What are we going to do without her? I shouldn't have said anything. Kaspar must have understood enough of it, or maybe he just picked up on the sadness. I don't know. But either way, it became clear to me as the days passed that he understood all too well that Elizabeth would soon be going. After her very public rooftop rescue, and it had been in the papers as well, Elizabeth had the perfect excuse to come up and see me more often, even for us to be seen talking in the lobby. So at least we were able to spend more and more time together during those final days. Time and time again I was tempted to tell her about how Skullface had blackmailed me, and how she had taken her father's money, but I thought how angry it would make her, and that was too much to expect a young girl of that age to keep quiet about such a thing. So I didn't tell her anything about that, but I did tell her things I've never told anyone else. About my life in the orphanage in Islington, about Harry the cockroach that I'd kept as a pet in a matchbox, about Mr. Wellington, who was supposed to look after us, but who must have hated children so much because he'd cane us so often for the slightest thing. There's a cockroach in a matchbox. That must be Harry. Oh, matchbox has got a picture of a ship on it. That's very cool. He caned me for keeping Harry, and then took him away and stamped on him right in front of my eyes, in front of all of us. Ooh, it's a bit horrible. That's what made me run away in the end. I'd often thought of it before, but I'd never dared. I told her how I'd wandered the streets of London for weeks, living rough, before finding work as the bellboy at the Savoy. And of course she wanted to know all about Countess Kandinsky. I told her my dream of finding my mother one day. I also told her so many of my hopes and dreams, and all the while she listened, wide-eyed. Kaspar?